Hello, today I'm going to talk about television, or rather the lack of television, as we haven't had one here for 11 years now. I'm going to start by giving a few facts about TV, both in the UK and in France, and then I'll go on to explain why we decided not to have one, and then finally end with what we do instead of watching TV. So, facts about TV. Well, first of all, TV didn't come to the UK households, till about 1936. At that time they were quite expensive and a lot of people rented televisions to start with, because to buy a new television would have cost about, I think it was about £70 in those days, which is the equivalent of about £1,000 now, so they were very expensive. And so now we've got to the point where in the UK 95% of households have a television. And I thought it might be less than that in France. Well, it is a little bit less, but it's actually about 92% of households in France have a television. So it's very similar. And I was quite surprised, because not having had one for so long now, and one or two of our friends here don't have a telly, same in the UK. And so I sort of thought it was much more people didn't have one. So I realised, oh yeah, okay, we're in the 5%, we're in the minority. And on UK television, until 1995, there were only 5 channels available. And now there's about 480 channels available, including the 6 main ones. So that's quite a change in quite a short period of time, really. The amount of time people spend watching television, I've only got averages for that, so it's going to vary quite widely, I guess. But in the UK, it's approximately 3 hours a day that the average person spends watching television. And in France, it's a bit more. It's about 4 hours a day in France. I've no idea why, but interesting. And people's favourite channel in the UK is the BBC still. And the news channel, I think 65% of people said BBC News channels were the thing they watched the most. And the amount of time spent viewing seems to go up with age. So young children are actually only watching about an hour a day on average. The 16 to 24-year-olds is the group that watches the least television. And then it increases, the viewing time increases as people get older. So the older 75s are watching the most, which you can maybe understand. If people tend to be more on their own and in their home, less able to get about, then that, you can sort of see that might be the case. And the other thing is that people in the UK, on average, are spending £444 on television services. So that would include things like Netflix, can't say that, and satellite TV and any of those other services you pay for, Sky Sports. I don't really know what they are because I'm not very up on it, but that's an average that people are spending on that. And finally, the licence fee in the UK, which I'm sure you're aware of if you live there, is at the moment it's £159. And the equivalent licence fee in France is £115, although this year something's changed and President Macron, as one of his as part of his election campaign, wanted to scrap the licence fee. So that has just recently, this year, been scrapped in France, so now we have no licence fee here. And so that's just a bit of an idea of what's happening in the world of viewing television, particularly in the UK. So why did we decide then not to have a TV? Well, I think the first thing that happened was when we were travelling around in the camper van and living in the camper van. We did that for the best part of a year, and we got out of the habit of watching television. So we just, it sort of happened without us realising, because I should say we did have a TV in the UK and we did watch it quite a bit. We watched a lot of news. There was that channel that always had the news revolving round, and we did watch that quite a bit. So we weren't like anti-television particularly. When I was growing up though, my parents didn't have a television until I was 11 years old, and then I remember that all my friends at that time did have a TV, and I remember going to other friends' houses to watch Top of the Pops and things like that. And then we finally got when I was 11, so I was very used to a childhood without television. So that was the first thing, is that we just never had one when we were in the camper van. And then when we moved into the house, it was quite interesting, because as you know, with your houses, with most houses, there's the place where the telly goes, sort of often to the left or the right of the fireplace. It was a bit like, oh, right, okay, how do we organise our room? At that point, we didn't even have a fireplace, actually, to organise it around, so it was a little bit strange. And that made us think, well, are we going to get a telly or not? I mean, we didn't have a lot of power, but we could have had a television. So at the time we thought, well, let's just try. Let's try without the television, see what that's like. We also thought there was something about was just watching the news all the time, and there's so many things happening in the world and stuff, and really started to think about that. I'm thinking, what's that doing to us? What's that doing to our brains as we're taking in all this stuff, which is usually negative? Most of the news is negative because that's what grabs your attention. And we started to question that and think about it a bit more and think, well, yes, you have this sort of human thing of wanting to know what's going on. We want to know what's going on in the world. We are interested, and we were very interested. But at the same time, you take it in and you watch the pictures and the images and you hear this, you see the horrendous suffering and sad things that are happening. Say like now it's the floods in Pakistan or the war in Ukraine. And you see these things and you feel it as a human being. You actually are feeling that. And actually our brains themselves cannot distinguish between that. In your brain it registers as this is happening. And so all these feelings and hormones and everything are released and having an effect on us. And then what do we do? What do we do with that? It's not like it's happening in our village where we can actually think, hey, this is happening, this person's having a problem, we can go and help them and physically do something. We can send money, which is often the case, we can do that, we can care, we can worry about it, think about it. Does that actually make any difference? And I'm not meaning to be really hard about this, but when you actually think about it, us worrying and being upset and everything is not actually changing the life of that person and those people that are going through it. It's not making a difference. The things that make the difference are the action, and fair enough, if we take some action, there's a difference and something happens in the world. If we're just worrying and getting upset, then all we're doing is harming ourselves and probably those around us, because we're not able to function in the same way and contribute all those things that you can do when you actually are not worrying and upset. So we started to question it in a big way. We tried without it, and it was a little bit strange, to be honest, for the first week or two once we were in the house, just because you're used to a telly being in the house. Didn't miss it in the camper van. But in the house, for a couple of weeks it was a little bit strange. But then we very quickly got used to it. And the other thing I should say is we've got laptops, and so we can look at the news on the laptop. If we want to go and just see what's happening somewhere in the world, we can look it up and we can see that. But what it stops us doing is that constant thing where it just goes round and round and round. You tend to, on the laptop, look something up, find out about it. Maybe not both of you. Like often it's Tom that looks at things like the news and stuff, and then he'll tell me. But you're not having those constant revolving pictures. You don't keep looking at it and looking at it in the same way, I think, as when a television's just switched on in the room. And we can also watch films, because one thing we did like about TV was films. And so we can do that. We can get films on our laptop, we can get DVDs from the library, we can watch things online. We've actually got a projector, a little digital projector and a screen, so we want the big cinema experience, we can do that. So it's not that we're completely like no technology or anything like that, but we're very happy without a telly. So what do we do instead of watching telly, you might ask, because a lot of people say, well, what do you do? Well, we talk to each other a lot, actually. We do spend quite a lot of time discussing things and chatting about things, so that's one thing we do. And I think we do more talking now we don't have a television, although I have to say that obviously there's more screens than just television. There's this screen that I'm making this video on now, and there's iPads and things like that, so yeah, there's other screen time. But as we're talking about just television at the moment, we have more time, definitely. So we've gained time, which to me is the most important thing we have, is time. We play games, and as you play Scrabble or cards and other games, so we do that. We go to bed early sometimes. Probably do tend to go to bed earlier, I think, when you don't have a telly. If it's not the telly that keeps you up kind of thing. And sometimes we do watch a film, watch something on DVD or something like that. So if you feel like you haven't got so much time or enough time to do some of the things you maybe want to do in your life, it might be worth looking at your television viewing and just seeing how much time you actually spend with a telly on, just sat there, sometimes just soaking it up. Other times, yes, you're choosing actively to watch a film or something like that. But if you want a bit more time for yourself or to do something different or learn something different, then maybe reducing the television time, viewing time, might make a difference to your life. And sometimes it's just these slightly, small changes can make quite a big difference, quite a significant difference. If the average person is watching telly for 3 hours a day, 3 to 4 hours a day, that's that's a good 20, 22 hours a week, something like that. That's quite a lot of time. And even if you just took off 7 hours of that, it's like a day. It's like the equivalent of a day when you look at it. And also, I think the other thing is about this news, this viewing of news thing. I must admit now, I do feel quite strongly about that, and I do think it causes quite a lot of harm to people. I think if you suffer from anxiety, depression, if you're prone to worrying, then watching the news on a constant basis, I think, can be quite harmful. It certainly doesn't help you to feel any better. And so that might be another thing to consider if you do feel a bit like that, and especially the way things are now. There's quite a lot of bad news at the moment, so it might be worth just considering just reducing that time a bit that you're actually watching news. And the other thing is, there's other places you can get your news as well. There's a great magazine called Positive News, and there's a lot of positive news in there because there are good things happening in the world. So it's not all that it is all negative, but the news that we see on the mainstream channels and on our televisions and things tends to focus on the negative because that's what triggers us. It's that fear factor and shock factor. So we tend to go, oh, and we're interested and we're hooked and we need to see more of it. And that was very apparent during COVID. I'm sure we can all remember what that was like. Even without a television here, as soon as I went to anyone's house who had a television or visiting the UK, and those daily figures were coming up and the shocking images were coming up, and it was a pretty constant process. So I think we know what that can be like. Maybe consider just giving yourself a little break from it for now and again and doing something different. It's good. It's good fun. I'm not just distressed. I'm not saying people are bad for having televisions at all. Remember, I had a television for long enough. It's not the television that's an evil thing. There's lots of really good programmes on television, and I know that. Those Planet Earth programmes are amazing, and actually they came really high up on the list of what people were watching. So the David Attenborough things was very high on the list. A lot of people viewing those programmes about the planet. So it really has got its uses, and people have access to some amazing programmes as well, which can actually do a lot of good. So I'm not anti-television. I'm just explaining why we don't have one and suggesting that, if you want a bit more time, or the news is making you feel a bit anxious, it doesn't actually make you feel any better, then consider less of it. That's all. If you like these videos, there's a couple more here. Subscribe and ring the bell if you want to be notified when I make new ones. I make 2 every week at the moment, okay, and they come out on a Wednesday and a Friday in the afternoon. Okay, have a lovely week. Lots of love. Bye.